Well, good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome to the WLBB Community Voice program. Our show brought to you by Tanner Health System. We are on 106.3 this morning, AM 1330. We are also on Facebook Live. Good morning. We'll introduce you to our guest here in just a few seconds. I'm Colin Worthington, by the way, your host on this Friday, the Getaway Friday, 3-day holiday coming up, of course, Christmas on Monday. We do appreciate you tuning in for the program this morning, where our guest is District 18 State Representative Kevin Cooke. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I do appreciate you coming out. I know you're busy. It's rushing up till Christmas, but you came in and gave us some time.
Yeah, I finished all my Christmas shopping yesterday. It's probably, I think, the early
Saturday, but at least a day or two before, shopping for some deals. But, boy, it's just no fun anymore.
Yeah, and it's bad when you have to do a printout. You can't wrap up the actual gift. You have to do a printout of what you got that didn't come in the mail in time.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Well, let me introduce Kevin to our wide audience this morning. You're a lifelong resident of Carroll County. You attended Carrollton City Schools, graduated Carrollton High School, attended both UWG and University of Georgia. You must be pretty excited about the Dogs.
Yeah, very excited.
After college, you had a brief career in law enforcement, and you spent 2 years on the road singing gospel music with the Diplomats Quartet. I've talked with you kind of off the record about this previously, but I wanted to talk about that this morning a little bit. I mean, I think you're a deeply religious man, and you do have a great voice this morning anyway. So
That's right.
2 years touring, doing Christian music, I guess.
Yeah.
And, tell me about that.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity. Than now, but all that said, it was an awesome opportunity to go and see a good portion of all the Southeast, and I'd work during the week and then jump on a bus on a Thursday, and we would usually come back in early in the morning, Monday morning. We'd have dates, 3-4 dates that weekend, well off away from here, and just get to minister all over the place. So it was a really cool experience, and as you can tell, morning times, I sang the bass part, so morning times were always the best for me.
Are there CDs out there then?
Yeah, there's still some CDs floating around. There's no downloadable iPod or iTunes stuff
Are
now.
there Kevin Cooke solos on those CDs?
There might be one.
That's
or two.
what we want to look for. Kevin, are you still a real estate appraiser?
I still technically have a license, but they probably need to update that.
I was going to say, I did get this off the website. It also said that you suggested that you had just married Crystal Cooke.
Yeah, we've been married now 10 years.
Doesn't mention your kids either.
Yeah. Well, that
Aww.
I got two beautiful little girls, Ella and Sadie, that are just the best things ever.
Been in office since January 2011, so this will be your 8th year.
8th year.
Serving on there. What about this coming year? We're going to have elections, obviously. Are you going back and forth with considering running again, or is that decision already made?
I think it's something that each and every person that's in an elected position should heavily consider, take some input in and around the district. Just a moment of just pure honesty. A lot of times elected officials will say, well, I've just had a lot of people have asked me to run or asked me to run again. Most of the time, they're including their mother, their aunt, their kids. Let's be honest about this. Most of the time they want to run again. That said, I'm still humbled by the opportunity to get served the area that I've grown up in and I love, and Lord willing plan to be here until the Lord takes me home. But all that said, I think you need to seriously consider each and every time a term comes up, whether or not that you're still effective, that the people do want you there, that you kind of take appraisal of the job that you're doing. Are you still the person you said you were going to be when you first started? All those things come into play, and then just prayer with family. I got young girls, so being away is difficult. But all that said, if qualifying were today, I would definitely qualify. I feel like that I have done what I said I was going to do, and will continue to. And just because we're Republican in Georgia, and the vast majority of the House and the Senate are Republican, and obviously we hold all the constitutional offices, it doesn't mean we're conservative. We need less Republicans in Atlanta and more conservatives.
And I did want to point out, I think that you look at yourself as a different type of Republican, if we're just going to lump in Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of times that we'll see, and you might be the one who votes against the Republicans or, in a different direction than the Republicans vote because you don't think something's conservative enough, a bill or something. But I think we see more no's from you than maybe anybody else in the House when it comes to stuff like that.
Over a number of years, since I've been there, I'm definitely within the top 5. I happen to know that because a good friend of mine that's not there anymore created a program where we can see who votes the most alike, who votes the most with leadership, who votes the most with the other party. So it's an interesting little case study in and of itself. But there's one or two libertarian guys that are there that have been there that we still agree on about 95% of the issues, but there's a number of issues that we do break from. But and it's not, I vote no because I'm not going to compromise my principles or beliefs through a bill. I might like 80% of it, but if 20% of that bill, if there's one or two sections that violate my principles or I believe are creating bigger government, or I see them creating some licensing part in the bill that is now a barrier of entry, for instance, for a regular Georgia citizen to be in profession, X, Y, or Z, I'm not going to vote for it just because I like it. I think a lot of times that's seen as compromise. Well, you have to do those kind of things. But the problem is I just fundamentally changed the freedom and liberty for somebody in some industry, if we're using that for an example, that undoing it's going to be much harder than going back and getting those 4 or 5 pieces that I did like passed in another bill or a standalone bill. So a lot of times we'll do things and it's in the spirit of quote unquote compromise, but really when you look at it, what's been compromised are the principles of most of the time the party to which that person passed it. So if it's a Republican that says they're for less government, less taxes, and more personal responsibility, and a section of the bill does the opposite, I don't think you can in good conscience vote for it and then go home and say, I'm for less government, less taxes and more personal responsibility. Well, I got 14 bills over here that say different because you voted yes.
District 18 State Rep Kevin Cooke, our guest on this morning's Community Voice. Do you personally feel that, when you're not going along with the governor, you're not going along with leadership, does that affect your role and your position, maybe getting your own bills across or being on important committees? Do you see that affecting you?
It does.
And I don't want to use the word outcast. But do you feel like you kind of
Well, yeah. At times, it's you feel like you're the kid playing dodgeball against 20, and but that's part of it. I did it as a kid. I'm okay with it. But look, I'm gonna be the first to say leadership has a difficult role because everything that you do is going to be nitpicked. Every decision that you make. So I know that the governor and the speaker, they have at times difficult times kind of navigating the waters, what's best to do, and I frankly disagree with them a fair amount. Sometimes, look, I'm married, and if I agree with my wife 80% of the time, we're doing good. She's probably right 90% of the time. But anyway, that said, I do my best to be agreeable still in personality and not be angry, not be mad about it. Maybe my natural inclination is to get kind of fired up about it. When I see freedom and liberty, I believe, being eroded, I have more of a late 1700s mindset of don't you do that to me, especially don't you do that to my daughters and any subsequent grandkids down the line. Don't limit their freedom and liberties. And I see that stuff that we do day in and day out, and it really, frankly, drives me nuts at times. But I also understand that, for instance, in the House, we have 180 members. I think we're the 4th largest body in the world when you look at the entirety of that. And, that's a lot to wrangle. So I know the Speaker has a difficult job, but when the principles of the party are what they are and we are Republican, we need to abide by those, if for anything, because that's who we tell the people that we are. And when we do things and then reward people that just go along to get along, or they just fall in line, it's a Republican bill, I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to vote yes for it because that's Chairman such and such's bill. That's ridiculous. And, we could train a monkey to do that. You hear a bell, they hit a green button, you give them a banana, and that, I think people expect more of their legislature than that.
Do you have enough time every time there is a bill? Do you have enough time to read every bill in detail?
Oh, definitely not at the very end. Conference committee reports, we need to change the rules there, because a conference committee report, when the House and Senate, when there's 3 members, they get together, they go in for conference, and they literally can change the bill completely. And then it has to sit back on the desk an hour before it's voted on. Well, if it's a 25 or 35 page rewrite of the tax code or certain sections, you have to have more time to digest that. That said, if a bill comes out of rules, the Rules Committee, which is essentially the last stop before the House floor, me and my buddies, we all read the bills to make sure that, one, it's going to hit the floor, or it could hit the floor. It could come out of rules at any time, particularly at the end of session, that we have read over and know what's coming out. Outside of that, if I'm on 7 committees, and you mentioned that earlier, the Speaker was very gracious to me a number of years ago, and I'm on 7 committees, and a number of them are influential. And so I obviously will read over any bill that's going through those committees in their first renditions. And then obviously there's a lot of adjustments made along the way, amendments and whatnot. But any other committees to which we have a number, I think another 32 committees on top of what I serve on, I don't read all those until they get to rules, because they're going to change, and or somebody dropped them and has no intention of moving them.
Before we take our break here, and I guess, I'm trying to be careful on how I even phrase this, but what do you think when people put you in that office? Do you think they expect you to be able to propose legislation, or do they just want you to vote the way they would vote? Because, I imagine, with your the way you stand, it might be harder for you to get legislation through.
Yeah, so it is.
And would they hold that against you? They say, well, he can't because he's not getting along. We talk about going along to get along. But, because if you're going to be one of these handful of people to do that, you have to juggle the perspective of the voter, I guess. Are they happy with that, and whether it's the right thing or not, they're going to be happy with that.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it comes down to. I'm sure there probably are some people in District 18 that would, or really any district in Georgia, their main goal for their rep or their senators, I want to see them be involved in all the big pieces of legislation with regard to they're the ones who carry it, or they're one of the top 4 or 5 co-sponsors of the bill that really push it across the finish line. I still am and still do things like that. I've changed tack a little bit over the last few years. The more outspoken you get, particularly if it's against your own leadership from time to time, you have to do things differently. And so, for instance, if I've had numerous ideas for bills that, or I've had industries that have approached me about certain bills, I'm like, look, this is an issue for us. How can you help us? And indeed, there have been issues with state government and how they relate to certain businesses. And I'm like, yeah, let's fix this, try to fix this problem. Well, there's times that you work smarter, not harder, and you go to another rep and say, hey, look, this is a really good issue. This needs to be done. Or you have them add it into their bill, so you still get things. You get the same stuff done. It's just you're not in front of the TV camera, or you're not the one who's getting the quote-unquote credit. And frankly, I couldn't care less if I get the credit or not.
District 18 State Rep Kevin Cooke, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. It is 8:43. We'll take our break and come back and talk about an initiative. I believe you and another, I don't know if it's a friend of yours or maybe it's somebody in the house that you guys have put together. And it does go back to the topic of being a real conservative or a real Republican. And we'll do that after this break. Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama, because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Now Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice Program, our show, streaming live on Facebook this morning. Do appreciate you tuning in. Perhaps you can, if you have any questions for Mr. Cooke here, you can post those on there, and I'll try and take a peek and throw them his way. We're also on News Talk 1330 AM and FM radio 106.3 again. District 18 State Rep Kevin Cooke is our guest. That covers a good portion of Carroll County and most of Haralson County.
That's right.
And then up in the northern part of Haralson County, Trey Staples. Trey Kelly, right, okay. Mm-hmm. Somebody called him a bulldog. I can't remember if that was you or Steve Graddick. Somebody called him a bulldog. He's a real go-getter. Tough guy. So you got two tough guys working, covering Haralson County. Let me go back to a story that I saw actually a couple of months ago, and I talked to you a little bit about it, called you, and you said we could talk about this on the program one day. This is the Buckhead Republicans. You were speaking there, and this is their promotion. Hear the insight and wisdom on the state of the Republican Party in Georgia and their ideas of principled leadership for future candidates in our state. The Institute for Principled Government. And that doesn't even, IPG. That's not even catchy, Kevin. But Institute for Principled Government. It's a new venture that you guys had formed to help recruit and get conservative candidates elected.
Yeah.
I guess you kind of alluded to why you think that is necessary at this point, but I guess, talk about how you got started with this.
Sure. Well, first, in Georgia, there's a number of groups that have their single issue and do an outstanding job, whether it's some organization as large as the NRA that does national level on down to state level, or it's the Georgia Carry. If we're just talking about Second Amendment, Georgia Carry is absolutely awesome for the Second Amendment, and particularly how that affects Georgia, and do a lot of good work there. There's other groups, Georgia Right to Life, Georgia Life Alliance, that focus on all issues of life, and plenty of other organizations that have their niche. What we believe was missing was an umbrella organization, if you will, not that controls or dictates anything to do with those individual organizations, but one that is full spectrum conservatism. So they're going to engage a bill that deals with the Second Amendment, but they're also going to engage a bill that deals with lowering the state income tax. Mm-hmm. They're going to be involved in all things conservative, and subsequently then too do scorecards and voter guides that also express what it looks like to be a full spectrum conservative. So a scorecard, for instance, at the end of a session would have 20 to 25 bills that include, like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, a licensing bill. So that show prior to, if it's this next session, the 2018 session, you didn't have to be licensed to carry a speaker across a parking lot. But now you do. So for any companies that do that, now you have to have all your people licensed. Just for an example, that bill would be scored, would be on that scorecard, along with if there was a bill that increased taxes, or if there was a bill that decreased taxes, that would be on there. So we would have 20 to 25 bills that would give a good snapshot as to this is what the Georgia General Assembly did this session. These are the bills that Institute for Principled Government Action thought were the most important, and gave the best glimpse into what good government's supposed to look like and how your rep and how your senator voted on it. So it is a tool for transparency to help those who say, I'm for less government, less taxes, more personal responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. When they go home, they can hold up that scorecard or send you to the place on the internet or the link they put on their website that substantiates that. So it's like, look, it's not just me saying it. Mm-hmm. There's an independent group that's doing this that recognizes it as well. But then also for those people, like, I'm sick and tired of what's coming out of Atlanta. I feel that it's growing government. If you tend to be like me, that you truly believe in less government, less tax, more personal responsibility, et cetera, then it gives them the ability to hold up a sheet of paper or send you to a place on the internet to take a detailed look and say, they say one thing, but they're doing something else when they get to Atlanta. And that's the problem with politics. If you always do what you always done, you always get what you always got. And if we want principles more than we want politics, then it's going to take an organization like a IPG to get out there and say, look, we're looking for principled legislators only. And if you're not one, go away.
Well, it talks about recruiting. I mean, where are you? I guess where would you be recruiting? Are people going to your website and saying, "Hey, I'd like some help and direction"? Are you?
So I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of pastors throughout the state, different events, and really, what you're looking for are character people. Somebody who's wanted to be in politics all their life. Let me be clear. A certain level of ambition is good and fine and fits into the grand scheme of things. I tend to be a little wary of somebody who says, I've always wanted to be the president. Okay, that's great to think big. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But why? Let's unpack real quick. Why do you want to be in these positions? Do you want it because you want your mail to say the Honorable Kevin Cooke? I mean, I got elected. That's what they started putting on the mail. I mean, how did the people that are mailing me this stuff know if I'm honorable or not outside I got elected? You know what I mean? But that's what people want. They want, a lot of them just want the title. And that's unfortunate. Those people, frankly, need to go because they don't go to Atlanta with the mindset of, I'm going to vote my district. I'm going to vote my principles and what I told I was going to vote, what I told my district I was going to vote. And there's some of those people that do that, but then there's plenty that don't. And when they do that, they're just doing it for their own, either their own personal gain, political gain, et cetera, so they can get certain positions or chairmanships. And that's the problem. We have to undo that and make it to where when an individual representative reads the bills and they say, you know what, I like Chairman such and such, or I like Representative so-and-so over here, but I can't support this bill. And, go to them, hey, if you made these changes, I can support your bill. Or you took this out. You're governing off a principle there. Or, look, honestly, I don't think that's the proper role and function of government. You take this out, I can be for your bill. If you don't, I'm sorry, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this.
Before we get to this final break here, talking about your principles, people who respect your principles and want to find somebody like-minded as yourself. We have the governor election coming up, lieutenant governor, secretary of state. Who falls into those categories for those three races? Who are you supporting?
Yeah, so I really like Brian Kemp. I've gotten to know him. I've served on the Regulated Industries Committee, which has a lot of overlap with his office. And Brian is a good man, really good man, good family man, hard worker. Have I agreed with every single thing he's ever done? No. I mean, I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But I think in now's climate, everybody's looking for somebody. I want somebody 100% right on every single issue. That doesn't exist. Brian is a great guy, would do a great job, has been all over the state. He would do well. I like Hunter Hill a lot. He's a good guy. But I'm for Brian. Lieutenant Governor is Jeff Duncan. As a guy I've served with in the House, Jeff is a godly man and a great family man, very, very skilled businessman, has started a number of businesses, sold them, done other things. He's been in a number of different segments of the business community and society in terms of he's been a builder. He's been owned a mail house and sent out stuff for. He's done all kinds of things. So he has that experience in business, but also has a really conservative record in the House. And then Buzz Brockway for Secretary of State.
Had him sitting right there in that chair.
Yeah, he's again godly guy. Came in with him. He's a very, very, very nice guy, and also a guy who is. Incidentally, Jeff and Buzz are Georgia Tech guys, so as a Georgia guy, it makes it really hard for me. But and frankly, Josh McCoon, Secretary of State race too, he's a good friend and a great guy, and would do a great job. But I came in with Buzz, and Buzz is my buddy.
We're going to take our last break here. Come back with about 5 minutes, wrapping up our discussion with District 18 State Rep Kevin Cooke. He'll be seeking re-election, possibly. Most likely,
yes.
We'll say most likely this year. If he is elected this year, or if nobody challenges him, he'll be have served a decade as state rep in District 18. We will take our final break. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System here on News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Also streaming live on Facebook this morning.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
All right, welcome back to the final segment here of the WLBB Community Voice program, show brought to you by Tanner Health System. Our guest is District 18 State Rep Kevin Cooke. Again, 5 minutes till 9 o'clock. I'm your host, Colin Worthington. Be careful out there this weekend, everybody. Hope you get safely to see your families and people coming to see you and enjoying the Christmas holiday. And, just be wise out there and have it merry and have it happy. I'm going to try and condense this conversation into 5 minutes, Kevin. I know I'm going to lob up something to you, and you're just going to have so much to say about it, but let's try this. Anyway, you and I have talked also about, I'll tell you, you talked about Kemp. Kemp had mentioned something about just improving the quality of life in rural communities. One of those topics has been the broadband, bringing, internet, high-speed internet to these rural communities. But you kind of did associate something, you and I talking before the show, you kind of associated that with that casino measure. I talked with Mike Dugan a couple weeks ago, and he had talked about he thinks the casino idea is kind of out. He said he doesn't see that coming back. But you kind of think maybe it will, and it might be associated with something else.
Right, yeah. So I tend to agree with Senator Dugan. I don't tend to agree. I do 100% agree with him on the casinos and them not coming to Georgia. That said, the casino lobby is trying a different tact this session. I think they're going to give it another go or two. They were in Florida a number of years before they finally quit and came to Georgia. Hopefully after this session they'll move on to some other place as well. But the broadband issue is a big issue in Georgia. Just simply for some of these folks in these rural areas that don't have the high-speed internet. You think about how the internet's become just part of our life. I mean, most people they're even reading their books now through a download from the internet, and they're educating themselves day in and day out through the internet. It's such a great tool. That said, the casinos now want to, when the Hope argument didn't work, they want to now use, well, we will be able to come in, and the revenues that we generate from taxes from us being here will help fund broadband in these communities. They'll say anything to try and to get their way into Georgia is what I believe. And I think I've kind of unpacked it before on the show with you about why I believe they're wrong. Even if you look at it even from a business perspective and a governmental perspective, the issues of casinos in Georgia and what is currently being proposed would basically pick winners and losers for different areas. So anybody around here that might be for them, they're not going to be one around here, which from the law enforcement perspective and the local government's perspective is a good thing because it costs so much money to
maintain those areas.
Yes, yes, it is, and it's a 52-mile radius typically outside of that, so it has a wide reach.
Well, we don't expect to see that coming back this year, so
Hopefully not.
But I guess in the future, and I guess pay attention to that potential campaign.
That's
where
right.
You see advertisements and commercials like, "Hey, we're trying to get broadband out to you." But I think there's an effort right now, and they're going to try and make an effort anyway for that rural broadband over the next year or so. So let's not confuse the two. Let's not put them together if they don't have to be at this point.
That's exactly right. Broadband is something that we need to look and see how we can positively affect.
Casey, happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you,
Happy Christmas to you, your family as well. And thanks for coming out this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Community Voice program this morning here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Everybody, please have a happy and safe Christmas holiday, and we'll be back here Tuesday morning at 8:30 on News Talk 1330.